Graduated college, I didn't know much about New Orleans. I was just looking for a place to start my career, and it turned out that the best job offer came from New Orleans. So I packed up and made the move, not really knowing what to expect. Now I absolutely love it there. I couldn't imagine moving anywhere else. Oh, I get to travel all the time for my job. There are 3 annual conferences I go to for continued education, and all 3 change cities regularly, so I get to see a lot of the country. I love traveling, especially when I'm not the one paying for it. One time, I decided to liven things up a bit by cosplaying as Rose McIver's character from iZombie. I thought it'd be a fun way to mix things up, but, I was a little worried I'd get in trouble for it. Turns out, no one even recognized that I was cosplaying, which was almost worse. So there I was, dressed as a fictional zombie coroner, and everyone just thought I was trying out a quirky new look. It was a bit of a letdown, but hey, at least I tried to make it interesting. The relationship between toys and being a coroner it's kind of funny when you think about it. I used to be great at the game Operation when I was a kid. That's actually where I first decided that I wanted to be a surgeon. I was all about carefully extracting those tiny plastic bones without setting off the buzzer. It was just this real rush. But then I started losing interest in becoming a surgeon when I found out that some surgeries, they're performed on patients who are awake, and that just seemed way too intense for me. So that's when I got the idea of being a coroner. I figured it was like being a surgeon, but all your patients are already dead, so it's easier. There's no pressure to keep anyone alive. I just have to figure out what happened to them. Yeah. The more I looked into it, the more it seemed like an exciting mix of being a doctor and being a detective, plus, not to sound too morbid, but, I've always gotten along better with dead people than living ones. They're quiet, they don't argue, and, they don't judge. Coroners on TV and in movies are always these quirky, genius detectives who solve crimes with a single glance at a body. They've got all the answers and make these dramatic revelations right in the middle of an investigation. Oh, and they're always in the thick of the action, like they're part detective, part superhero. In reality, being a coroner is way more about detailed, methodical work. You're buried in paperwork and lab work, and then there's the emotional toll that dealing with death every day is no joke. And it's not nearly as glamorous as it looks like on screen. I get called to crime scenes sometimes. Most of the time it doesn't get to me. You learn to stay focused, handle what's in front of you, and just move on. But there was one scene I just couldn't shake. It was a child's room. Everything was still in place. Toys, drawings, little desk. It felt like he'd just stepped out for a minute, and I kept noticing details I just didn't want to see. I finished the work, and I kept it together like always. And when I got home, I just sat on the edge of my bed, and I just couldn't move. I wasn't crying. I wasn't thinking. I was just gone for a while. Yeah, that was the only one job that followed me home. My biggest fear as a coroner isn't about all the death I deal with. It's getting something wrong. If I make a mistake, a murderer could walk free. Worse, an innocent person could end up going to prison because of me. That kind of pressure doesn't go away, even when you do everything by the book. Yeah, there was a time where I had to testify at a murder trial, and there was plenty of old school evidence pointing to the guy being guilty. But I was only there to testify about the forensic evidence, and in that case, there wasn't anything that pointed to guilt or innocence either way. So that's what I told the jury. He was found not guilty, and a few weeks later, the victim's family sent me a letter blaming me. I know I handled it right, but still, it stayed with me. My mom died when I was still a kid, way before I ever started thinking seriously about career stuff. She never knew I became a coroner. I've thought about that a lot over the years. Not in a sad, dramatic way, just in that weird passing thought kind of way where you wonder what she would have thought about who I ended up becoming. I get along well with all my coworkers, but the only real friend I have at work is Scott. He's the only one I hang out with outside of work. Scott and his girlfriend Sarah are my two best friends. Most of the people I work with are already deceased. I get along with them well enough, but I don't consider them friends. It's the living coworkers like Scott who make the job more enjoyable. My dad had mixed feelings about me becoming a coroner. He was proud that I pursued a career in medicine and respected that I chose a tough job that not many people could handle. At the same time, he was worried about the emotional toll it might take. He knew dealing with death every day could be tough and sometimes asked if I was sure about my choice, reminding me that it was okay to switch paths if I got, too overwhelmed. Even with his concerns, he still supported me completely. Scott, my detective friend, has this running joke about bears. Once, while reviewing an autopsy report, Scott asked me if I thought the victim was attacked by a bear. And I looked at him, confused, and said, "The victim was shot 3 times." Without missing a beat, Scott asked, "By a bear?" Scott's question was just his way of lightening the mood. And from then on, anytime he'd see me working on a case that was clearly not an animal attack, he'd ask if I thought it was a bear attack. It's silly, but, a little humor helps us cope with the realities of dealing with death every day. One of the more puzzling cases I worked on was a murder in an old house with no signs of forced entry. All the doors and windows were secure, and there was no evidence of tampering. The house had a wide chimney, though, which led me to suggest the possibility of someone entering through it. Some of the cops on the scene started calling the killer Santa Claus, but the name didn't stick. That case was never solved. To this day, we don't know for sure how the murder took place and if my chimney theory held any weight. Staying in Scranton for my career wasn't ever on my radar. I knew there'd be more opportunities if I moved to a bigger city. Besides, I've always wanted to live somewhere, with nicer weather than Scranton. The weathers there are brutal, and I was just done with them. Becoming a coroner involved a lot of schooling, let me tell you. I had to go through medical school, which is already no small feat, but that is just part of the journey. On top of that, I also studied criminology, and It's not enough to just understand the human body. You got to get into the mind of criminals, understand crime scenes, learn how to piece together the story from the evidence. So, I took courses in forensic science, criminal behavior, even a little bit of law. Yeah, it was a long road, but if all that work helps me catch the bad guys, it was worth it. Sarah's never been arrested or involved in any crime. The museum she works at did have a break-in last year, but nothing was stolen, so it wasn't exactly noteworthy. Honestly, the only real link between her and crime is that she's dating a detective. Other than that, she's about as far from the crime world as you can get. Well, Scott's a detective, so fighting crime is literally his full-time job. He seems pretty good at it, too. I mean, he hasn't worked on any high-profile cases that I know of, but he handles all his work pretty well. There are definitely fewer criminals on the streets because of him. Sophia and I both majored in criminology, which is hilarious in hindsight because she ran a full-blown illegal ticket scalping operation out of our dorm room. She had the whole system down, like bots, burner accounts, resale timing. I started helping her after a while. And at first it was just a curiosity, but then, it kind of turned into this weird rush. We'd make a few hundred off nosebleeds to Bon Jovi and celebrate with takeout. And it's crazy. There we were studying crimes by day and committing them at night. I am not a hardened criminal. That is the only time I ever broke bad. My friend Scott had his World of Warcraft account stolen by a hacker once. He had this really high-level druid he'd been working on for years. It was his pride and joy. One day he tried to log in and boom, everything's gone. I mean, they probably sold all his stuff for real-world money. Scott was devastated, and a few of us rallied together and helped him power level a new character. And it took a while, but, we got him back on his feet in the game. Yeah, still, it wasn't the same. There's never been any kind of incident at my current place. The apartment building is very safe and in a good area. My last apartment, though, that was in a rougher neighborhood. My place itself was never broken into, but my car wasn't so fortunate. One morning, I went out to my car and I found it with a smashed window, open door, and a raccoon sitting in the front seat. For a split second, I was completely baffled, and I actually thought a raccoon had broken into my car. Of course, reality kicked in, and I realized a human had broken in and must have left the door open. The raccoon just saw an opportunity and climbed in later. My new place has secure parking, so now I don't have to worry about walking out and finding a raccoon joyriding in my car. Crime in comic books. Man, it's just wild. I mean, these criminal plans never make any sense. You got these villains who go through all the trouble to plan out the perfect heist, and then they try to pull it off in Metropolis. Seriously, how could that go wrong? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because Superman lives there? And then the villains always have these fantastic powers that can make them rich legally. Take Weather Wizard, for example. The guy invents a machine that controls the weather. And the best way he can think to make money with it is to rob banks? Really? You could end droughts, create perfect weather for crops, charge a fortune, and live the high life. But no, let's go fight the Flash instead. All the villain logic just falls apart if you look at it too deeply. It's best to just enjoy the stories and not overthink them. Crime in New Orleans? Yeah, it's got a bit more crime than your average city, but overall it's still a pretty safe place to live. The real kicker is Mardi Gras. Those 8 weeks are insane. Everyone works overtime, and it's still just not enough. The city goes nuts, and we're just trying to keep up with all the craziness. And then, well, there's the superstitions. You can't go a month without someone blaming a crime on voodoo or the rougarou or some other supernatural nonsense. It's like, come on, people. You got to sort through all that folklore to get the real story. But hey, that's what makes New Orleans, New Orleans. Well, death is everywhere in crime. I mean, that sounds obvious, but people forget how often one leads to the other. Someone thinks they're just roughing up a guy and then it goes too far, or they bring a weapon they swear they'll never use, and then they panic. I've seen so many cases where nobody set out to kill anyone, but someone still ended up dead. Crime is not an evil mastermind thing. Most of the time it's just regular people making awful decisions in the heat of the moment. You wouldn't believe it, but some people out there genuinely think mythical creatures are behind crimes. Like in New Orleans, there's this whole thing about the rougarou, right? It's like a werewolf. And people actually believe it's out there causing mayhem. Somebody gets attacked, and they're like, oh, must have been the rougarou. Like, really? A werewolf? And then there's all this old school nonsense about witches and sorcerers. Back in the day, people would be like, oh, that guy's cow died. Must be the witch next door. It's nuts, but people took it dead serious. Even now, you hear these whispers of supernatural stuff being tied to crimes. It's like they need a scapegoat. And who better to blame than someone who can't defend themselves because they don't exist? In my job as a coroner, I've seen some pretty weird cases. People claim all sorts of things, like their loved one was done in by some mythical creature, but it's never true. It's just wild to see how these legends stick around. People want to explain the unexplainable, and I guess blaming a mythical creature is as good an excuse as any of them, you know? It's like, come on, folks, it's not Bigfoot breaking in who stole your bike. It's just your sketchy neighbor. There's a story that everyone at work has heard about. It's a drug bust, all thanks to a dog. So this guy was running a pretty sophisticated drug operation out of his house with, all the usual security measures like cameras, alarms, you name it. But what brought him down was his big, friendly Labrador Max. So one day, Max got loose and wandered off, and a couple of police officers found him. They scanned Max's tags, and they got the address. Deciding to do a good deed, they brought him back themselves. When the officers got to the guy's house, the guy heard his dog barking as they approached and swung his door wide open as soon as they knocked, excited that someone brought Max back. His demeanor changed abruptly as soon as he realized it was police officers returning him. With his door wide open, they could easily see inside, and they saw tables covered in drug paraphernalia, like bags of pills and cash lying around. The whole setup was in plain view. The guy was arrested, and his entire operation was shut down, all because Max decided to go on a little adventure, and the police were kind enough to bring him back home. Yeah. It's a story that everyone at work loves to tell, And the best part, they found Max a much nicer home afterwards. Growing up in Scranton, crime was practically non-existent. It was the kind of place where you felt safe leaving your doors unlocked. I remember twice when I lived there, shoplifting made the nightly news. That is how low the crime rate was. And this low crime rate makes what happened to Tommy sting even more. It was just such an anomaly that made it harder to process. I've heard that crime has gotten a lot worse there since I moved away, but I'm not sure how bad it actually is now. It baffles me how so many people commit major crimes right in their own backyard and never think to get out of Dodge. It's like they didn't put any thought into it. I mean, the first place the cops are going to look is right where the crime happened, and then fan out from there. It's mind-blowing to me that people, they don't think to put some distance between themselves and the scene of the crime. You'd think they'd at least hop on a bus or a plane and get out of town, but nope. They just go back to their regular lives, hoping, nobody connects the dots. It's almost like they're daring to get caught. It's even crazier when you consider how easy it is to travel these days. I mean, with all the options available, you think planning something major would have a getaway plan that takes them far away, but nope. Oof. Back in college, my roommate Sophia had this little stuffed raccoon she kept on her desk. We were both studying criminology, so naturally we gave him a full-on fake backstory as a career criminal. The joke was that Sophia was keeping him around to study the criminal mind. It was stupid, but it made us laugh. He looked so innocent, which of course made it funnier. I think we even gave him a name at some point. I just can't remember. I can't remember it right now. On screen, you've got these genius detectives and coroners who correct the case with one look at the crime scene. Yeah. They're always finding that one perfect piece of evidence, like, oh, look, a single hair. This must belong to the killer's cousin's dog groomer. It's all dramatic music, quick cuts, and bam, case closed in 45 minutes. No, in real life, no, it's a whole lot of methodical, boring work. There's no dramatic flair when you're filling out endless paperwork and waiting weeks for lab results to come back. And, let's not forget the sheer amount of dead ends and false leads you have to sift through. It's like, hey, we found a hair. Great, now let's run it through the lab, wait for it to come back, and hope it's not just from some random guy who walked by last week. And those shootouts and car chases, please. Most of the time, solving crimes mostly, it involves sitting at a desk. There's no epic soundtrack playing in the background, just the hum of fluorescent lights. Up until Tommy's murder, crime was more of an abstract concept to me. Crime wasn't something we encountered often in Scranton. For me, crime was mostly what I saw on TV shows or in movies. It was something that happened to other people in far-off places. My dad used to tell me to be careful and lock the doors. I mean, typical parenting advice, but it didn't feel like it was a pressing concern. We lived in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other, and the biggest crime I dealt with up until that point was probably getting my bike stolen once. Yeah. My mother wasn't involved in any crime herself. However, her father was in prison. I remember her taking me along to visit him a few times when I was very young. Yeah, those visits are some of my earliest memories. My father wasn't thrilled about her bringing me, but she wanted her father to see his first grandchild. After my mother died, we never really talked about her father anymore. It was just like he faded out of our family story. I'm not even sure why he was in prison. No one ever told me. I never felt the need to dig into it too much. Yeah, I have a fear of crime, but it's just a normal, rational one. I mean, who doesn't? I take sensible precautions like anyone else. Locking my door, being aware of my surroundings and avoiding sketchy areas at night. I mean, it's not something I obsess over, but I definitely stay mindful and take steps to keep myself safe. Well, my friend Scott is a detective and one of my closest buddies. We work together a lot, and he always has stories about his latest cases, so that's a pretty strong tie between my friends in crime. Most of my other friends are people I know online. We game together and chat regularly. None of them are criminals, at least not as far as I know. My dad was a history teacher. He didn't have much to do with crime, aside from making sure our family stayed on the right side of the law. He wasn't exactly the godfather. That makes me think of college. My roommate Sophia and I were both criminology majors, so crime ended up being the center of my entire college experience. We studied it every day and talked about it almost every night. The program was intense, and so, yeah, it was always on my mind. Well, Santa is a criminal, if you think about it. He breaks into over 1 million houses every year. You can't just break into someone's house and leave them presents. He even seems like a criminal in my dream. He has a sack and he's quietly gathering our presents from the dresser drawer. It's almost like he's robbing us. Wait a minute. He is robbing us. Wait, I remember a little more from my dream now, okay? I was in the hallway, looking into my parents' bedroom as he was filling his sack. I'm being quiet as I can, hoping he doesn't hear me, and I'm feeling this chill from the window. He came in. He's not Santa Claus at all. He's just some guy. Yeah, I was peeking around the corner, watching him from the reflection in my mom's vanity mirror, hoping he wouldn't see me. He's stuffing his backpack, and when we heard this rustling it was from the closet, and he froze and looked at the closet, and whatever was inside came bursting out. Oh my God. Tommy. It was my brother Tommy. This isn't a dream. No. This is a memory. I was awake when Tommy died. He came bursting out of the closet with Chekhov's phaser, and he tried to stun the burglar, and the burglar, seeing this kid popping out and aiming a gun at him, he just shot him in panic and escaped out the window. I looked at Tommy, but the hole in his chest, it was huge, and I couldn't think. I just wandered around, and I must have crawled back into bed. And when my dad woke me up the next morning, I guess I must have just blocked it out. No wonder I blocked it out. I'm the reason Tommy died, don't you see? I was too lazy to keep him out of Dad's stuff, so I told him that stupid lie about the Star Trek props and that they were real, and that's what got him killed. He tried to stun the burglar with Chekhov's gun because he thought it was a real working phaser.
Jennifer, you need to understand you are not responsible for your brother's death.
Not directly, but if I hadn't lied to him, he would still be alive. Why do you think my dream started 8 months ago instead of years ago?
I noticed that you got your dog Spock about 8 months ago. Is this the first time you've cared for someone since you used to look after your little brother?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is.
This explains quite a few things you mentioned.
So do you think my nightmares will stop now?
Now that your memory is out in the open, you can approach it in a healthy way. It should no longer interfere with your sleep.
Thank you.